Hello YouTube, I'm the Star Child and welcome to Tentai Kansoku. Have you ever met someone who was genuinely a nice person? Like, no ulterior motives, no fake mask to lure you in, just someone who was just like that. It can be jarring, especially in this day and age where influencers reign and show off their fake lives and carefully curated personalities. Even meeting someone, especially in the public eye, who is genuine and raw can throw us off. More so when that person is completely and unabashedly a nice and kind person. But there was someone like that once, who not only graced our television screens for generations, but made actual statements and differences in the world of children's television and beyond. Today, we're exploring the planet that embodies Mr. Rogers' neighborhood and the influence of Mr. Rogers himself. Mr. Fred McFeely Rogers, yes, that is his actual middle name, was born on March 20th, 1928 in Pennsylvania to James and Nancy Rogers. In his early childhood, Rogers was extremely shy, introverted, overweight, and suffered from bad asthma that unfortunately kept him homebound for a lot of the time. That, combined with being bullied for his weight, meant that he didn't have many friends. This caused him to turn inward, creating worlds of imagination in his bedroom with his toys, puppets, and stuffed animals. This is something we see reflected in the land of make-believe that exists in his show, but we'll get to that later on. High school, however, was a breakthrough for Rogers. He eventually found his people, friends who saw and accepted him for who he was. This gave him the confidence to join and become the president of the student council, join the National Honor Society, and become editor-in-chief of his school's yearbook club. Rogers also attended a few colleges, getting his Bachelor's of Music in 1951 and then his Bachelor of Divinity in 1962. He became an ordained minister a year later, focusing on teaching kids, likely choosing to become someone that he wished he had in his early childhood. While attending college, Rogers worked with Josie Carey, a children's show host and songwriter who worked for Pittsburgh's WQED network, to create a show called The Children's Corner. Carey hosted while Rogers actually worked behind the scenes, creating puppets and characters such as Daniel Tiger, King Friday, Queen Sarah, X the Owl, Henrietta Cat, and Lady Elaine, all of which who made an appearance in his later self-titled show. Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood aired in 1969. The show actually had a predecessor, believe it or not. In 1963, a Canadian broadcaster contacted Rogers about doing a children's show on their network. The show would be named Mr. Rogers, written out with the stylization of the two words sharing the R. He eventually moved back to the US, where he continued the series under its more well-known name. The show aired on NET, which was later replaced by PBS, and continued until Rogers' retirement in 2001. It continued on in syndication until 2007, where various PBS stations removed it from their rotation. Then it was completely removed from syndication by PBS as a whole by 2009. The show still exists, however. It's available online with full episodes on the PBS Kids website for free. The main demographic for the show was preschool age to early childhood, and as such, the pacing was slow, with no crazy jump cuts, flashy shots, or laugh tracks. The episodes almost give off this continuous shot vibe. Each episode was structured with two main parts, the real world and the land of make-believe sections. The beginning would feature Mr. Rogers himself coming home and singing the iconic theme song It's a Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, and simply going through his average day.
It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? Could you be mine?
This seemingly mundane coming home ritual became as iconic as the song, as he would go through the same motions every episode of removing his jacket and replacing it with a cardigan, which now rests at the Smithsonian as a symbol of the cultural influence he had. He would also then remove his dress shoes and replace them with his iconic blue sneakers. There would be a focus on something simple. He would take the opportunity to calmly explain the what and why of whatever he was doing. He would often take the viewers on tours of restaurants and factories, or stay at home and do crafting, play music, or interact with the human cast that often visited his studio home. Rogers felt the need to act completely natural and avoid playing a character as a way to connect with the children in the audience, understanding that children are way smarter than you may think and can, quote, spot a phony from a mile away. We would then head to the land of make-believe, where the titled topic usually takes place. This would range from anything from the importance of sharing to conflicts with friends. Rogers reprises his role as a puppeteer here, along with other members of the staff and some human residents of the land assisting him. Pretty much everything in the land of make-believe was a character, including the trolley that would help take us there every episode, which moved back and forth as its own personal brand of speaking to the other characters. This is also where the puppets mentioned before come in. Pretty much everyone featured on the Children's Corner returned to make their home in Roger's land of make-believe, as well as a few new faces. Most notably are Daniel Striped Tiger, a young tiger cub whose equal parts the juxtaposition of timidness and bravery, King Friday the 13th, the demanding yet caring leader of the land of make-believe, Lady Elaine Fairchild, an eccentric yet brave and outspoken troublemaker who apparently strikes fear into the hearts of men, either due to her personality or her looks. Henrietta Pussycat, a lovable and fashionable kitty who spoke a mixture of meows and regular words. And X the Owl, a chill and fun-loving owl who is, albeit a bit of a bookworm and know-it-all. There was also a diverse cast of human characters that would pop up in the real-world section of the show, who were always just framed as other residents of the neighborhood. Mr. McFeely, the mailman, Officer Clemens, the singing policeman, Lady Aberlin, the caring and empathetic niece of King Friday, and Handyman Negri, the musical handyman. Those are just a few of the reoccurring humans in the world that Rogers built. Some of them existed in both the land of make-believe and the real world, possibly symbolizing that not everything in your imagination needs to be fantastical. Sometimes it just needs to be, and there is beauty in the mundane. The show would then return to the real world, where Mr. Rogers would wrap up the themes of the episode by connecting the events that happened in the land of make-believe with real-world experiences. And the show would end with Rogers putting his jacket and shoes back on as he sang the ending theme, "It's Such a Good Feeling," and he bid his signature goodbye.
You always make each day such a special day. You know how? By just your being you. Only one person in the whole world like you, and people can like you just the way you are. We'll be back next time. Bye-bye.
Though he was a champion for children first and foremost, Rogers didn't just stop with kids. He took the opportunities to speak out on what he believed. And it wasn't from a political or religious aspect either. These were simply things that he believed in. Now that I'm thinking about it, despite being a devout Christian and a registered Republican, none of those aspects of his life were forced on anyone or really even brought up. He was critical of other children's TV programs, mentioning that they often treated children like consumers instead of people. He also famously spoke to the Senate about the importance of PBS way back in 1969, when there were discussions of cutting funding to public television even way back then.
I'm constantly concerned about what our children are seeing. And for 15 years, I have tried in this country and Canada to present what I feel is a meaningful expression of care.
Do you narrate it?
I'm the host, yes. And I do all the puppets, and I write all the music, and I write all the scripts.
Well, I'm supposed to be a pretty tough guy, and this is the first time I've had goosebumps for the last 2 days. I think it's wonderful. I think it's wonderful. Looks like you just earned the $20 million.
One of the biggest stands he took, and on the show no less, was the episode where he silently tackled racial inequality and segregation. Despite the Civil Rights Act of 1964, segregation and inequality were still fought for and against in many places all around the country. Black people were still being denied entry to many places that were considered white establishments. Public pools were one of them. Black people were simply not allowed to swim in the same water as white people at the time. But Mr. Rogers, like, believe it or not, most normal people thought that was ridiculous. So, as any artist would, he used his platform to express his stance on the matter. And in episode 1065, he did the unthinkable. He invited Officer Clemens, the singing policeman of the neighborhood, and one of the black members of the cast, to share a small pool with him. Yeah, I know that sounds ridiculous now, but back then it was absolutely insane that he did this, especially on national television. Like, this was back during a time where a group of black and white people jumped into a pool in St. Augustine, Florida together to protest these laws, and the manager was so racist and pissed off by their actions that he poured literal acid in the water while they were in there. Fortunately, he was also a complete moron because the water diluted the acid and no one was actually hurt. But there they sat, their feet in this small blue wading pool in the studio set backyard of Roger's television home, in color on American TV in 1969, together, simply having a regular-ass conversation like two human beings would do, even sharing the same towel to dry off afterwards, breaking a well-established color barrier. The two would recreate this scene 24 years later in 1993 during Clemens' last episode on the show. Only this time, Rogers took it upon himself to dry Officer Clemens' feet for him, which moved Clemens as he saw a connection with Jesus washing the feet of his disciples. It was something he carried with him, even to this day. Fred Rogers passed away on February 7, 2003, after an arduous but ultimately short battle with stomach cancer. He wasn't a man who was out for glory, just someone who believed that children should be taught empathy and that they deserved honesty, patience, and care. His influence, however, immortalized him, and his legacy continues to be carried on to this day. Fred Rogers Productions is a rebranded continuation of Rogers' original nonprofit production company, Family Enterprises Incorporated, and they continue to produce TV shows and games that carry the messages and philosophies of Mr. Rogers onward to a new generation. Their most recent and currently most popular television production being the children's show Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood. I remember my younger cousins watching the show and having the familiarity of the name Daniel Tiger scratching around in my brain, until I realized, yes, it is that Daniel Tiger. The show embodies the core of what Mr. Rogers was trying to accomplish with his own show, continuing to gently educate children about empathy, dealing with their feelings, self-esteem, and the like. This time is from a child's point of view, however, as Daniel goes through learning life lessons right alongside the viewer and relating to them on their own level. There was also a documentary called Won't You Be My Neighbor that released in 2018 that explored his life and legacy in more detail. Then in 2019, Netflix released a biographical drama about his life, with Mr. Rogers being played by Tom Hanks, who was apparently like his ninth cousin or something. For me, watching Mr. Rogers was like a generational experience. My mom and other boomer relatives knew about him, but they might have been a little too old to watch the show by the end of the 60s when it aired. I grew up watching it though, right alongside other PBS classics like Thomas the Tank Engine and Sesame Street. I recall younger relatives also becoming acquainted with Mr. Rogers all the way into syndication. Looking back, I love how he spoke to the kids watching like they were people. So many adults fall into speaking down to children, but Rogers never did that. He spoke like we were equals, which I feel like definitely helps bring that confidence and self-esteem up in a child. Back then, there was no one who didn't know who he was, even earning himself a parody through Eddie Murphy's Mr. Robinson's Neighborhood on Saturday Night Live. But I remember tuning in to watch that final episode and seeing him, seemingly so much older than I remembered, signing off for the last time with a message to the generation that grew up with him and the neighborhood.
I'm just so proud of all of you who have grown up with us, and I know how tough it is some days to look with hope and confidence on the months and years ahead. But I would like to tell you what I often told you when you were much younger. I like you just the way you are.
The only controversy that might be seen as bad on Rogers' part was his encouragement of his friend Francois Clemens to stay in the closet while on the show. Now I know this sounds homophobic, but this was actually Rogers' way of protecting his friend. Remember Officer Clemens? Yeah, that's him. They were already doing stuff like pushing racial boundaries, which was legitimately dangerous at the time. Adding in that Clemens was gay on top of it could have been catastrophic, and Rogers saw that. I think it's hard to imagine these days, but if you think it's bad for anyone in particular now, back then it was so much worse, and this decision could have very well saved his life. Rogers even eventually apologized to him for this years later because he understood the impact of this suggestion. He never had any ill intentions, and Clemens wholeheartedly accepted his apology because they understood each other. And as we do, let's look at someone else's experience. Christine says, rewatching episodes of Mr. Rogers made me smile so wide. I felt like I did at home watching that show as a child. It was my absolute favorite. It's such a good feeling to know you're alive. I was so happy after hearing those familiar bells ring and whistles blow, but especially that sweetheart sing say, "I'll be back." I swear it made me cry with happiness. They say no one's perfect, but I think it's safe to say that this man came damn close, and I genuinely believe, as unfortunate as it sounds, that there will never be another human on Earth like Fred Rogers. And that's where we'll leave this one. Like, comment, subscribe, blah blah blah, you guys know the drill by now. Thanks so much for watching this one, guys. Remember to embrace your inner child. Goodbye, neighbors.